Thank you for your continued participation in our virtual conference today. I'm Michael Bocadoro, Executive Director of the California Creamery Operators Association. As Gary stated so well in his opening remarks this morning, the disruptions and challenges the COVID-19 pandemic have created have been widespread. Throughout these challenges, the USDA have been critically important, working to address food insecurity and to support producers and processors through a number of evolving aid programs, with the goal of creating long-term solutions to build back a better food system. We are honored to have with us today the administrator of USDA's Farm Service Agency, Zach Ducheneaux. Since his appointment in February, he has been providing leadership and direction on agricultural policy, credit and loan programs, conservation, commodity, disaster, and farm marketing programs. Ducheneaux previously served as the executive director of the Intertribal Agriculture Council, the largest longstanding Native American agriculture organization in the United States. He operates his family ranch on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation in north central South Dakota with his brothers. And with that brief intro, I'd like to welcome our next speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce Zach Ducheneaux.
Hello, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to share some of the things that we've got going with the United States Department of Agriculture and in the Farm Service Agency specifically. The introduction may be a little generous because the first couple of weeks of February, I was drinking from the proverbial fire hose. There was a lot going on, and frankly, a lot of things that I didn't have a lot of knowledge or expertise in on a firsthand basis, because Indian country, as you may or may not be aware, is really more focused in the livestock sector than it is in the crop or dairy or other product sector. So there was a lot to learn as we came on board, but I have the good fortune of being surrounded by a team of folks in over 2,000 county offices, 50 state offices, and the headquarters staff that have just done tremendous work throughout the pandemic to continue to deliver programs. And I always like to at least lead off my conversation with a thank you to them for all of their work. It's been nothing short of miraculous, the level of program delivery we've been able to execute effectively, being in a modified work posture, dealing with the pandemic. Some of our county offices had to be 100% closed to the public and staff working from home, but we still got all the programs out, plus all of the ad hoc disaster programs. So I always want to tip my hat to our dedicated staff at the FSA and remind you all to give them a thank you when they see you on the street. They're out there in your community, and oftentimes they don't get that thanks that they deserve. As I came onto this role and learned about the diversity of agriculture beyond what my existing universe was, it became very apparent that the administration had a different perspective on equity and inclusion than has ever been really contemplated before. When we came on, we stopped the CFAP 2 payment program, and we initiated a review of all of these programs to better provide equitable service all across the various and diverse stakeholders in agriculture. Coming from California, you're very aware of that. You've got everything from potatoes in the Klamath Basin to dairy farms to alfalfa and other crops in the southern part, not to mention the fertile valley there around Fresno and up the road. With that, it became apparent that there were some gaps in the CFAP and CFAP 2 that needed to be addressed. So the administration set to putting our crew at the FSA headquarters office to work building something more inclusive. That started with reaching out to a lot of stakeholder groups, just like the California Creamery Operators Association, and engaging in listening sessions targeting diverse populations, not only with respect to race and ethnicity, but also with respect to crop production. So we took as much input as we could And we've started to build out those programs, and you'll start to see those roll out over the course of the summer if the ones that are near and dear to you haven't already rolled out. I'll go through a few of the talking points that they provide to me, but I'm really more interested in learning how things are working for you, what isn't working for you, and how we can craft a better, not only build back a better ag system, but let's build back a better safety net and a better program of assistance from the government to help you all do the things you need to do. The administration comes with several initiatives around ag and food systems. First and foremost is we were made painfully aware in many cases of the shortcomings of our ag and food systems. Here on my reservation, for example, we grow 40,000 head of beef cattle a year, and our grocery store shelves were devoid of beef. And I'm sure that was a story that was replicated all across the country. Our friends just to the east of us were having to depopulate their herds because the processing centers couldn't take them in the time of COVID. So part and parcel of what the administration wants to bring to the table is build a more resilient local and regional food production system. And a lot of that involves standing up more processing opportunities, more marketing opportunities for our producers. Along with that, we saw when those grocery store shelves were bare, the price the producer might have been receiving went down, which is a paradox that we need to address. And it's all tied back to that. So we're going to work to include or to ensure fairer markets for all producers of all commodities. Another aspect that the Secretary is fond of talking about is the nutrition deficit in our food system. And we want to make sure that the things that we're doing are helping you all produce the healthiest, most nutritious product for all of our customers, not only in America, but as we export a lot of our food across the country. It all really comes down to that producer on the ground. And how do we make sure that we are getting the most income that we can equitably to that producer? Because without that producer out there engaging in that production, taking a lion's share of the risk, we're not going to have the base product grown here to support further development and further economic development in our communities, especially in our rural sectors. So how do we do that? We've got to look at other streams of income for the producers, tap into our conservation programs, our climate smart ag incentives, and build some more income streams for our producers that they can generate from their farming, ranching, or production. Because one of the figures that the Secretary has cited in a couple different presentations really resonates with me as a livestock grower. I am offended that we have a situation in this country where 89% of our producers generate more than half of their income off the farm. And we have to think about building a system that starts to address that. We're going to be able to do that with infrastructure investments and improving our clean energy capacities. One of the questions that popped up already is about the greenhouse gases and climate smart ag. We'll get into some of those questions very quickly, but I just want to end on the final note. For the last over a century, the USDA has been engaged in practices which are discriminatory. And the Secretary and the administration are committed to changing that. My personal goal as the Farm Service Agency administrator is to build a system of equitable access where we don't need to have an Office of Civil Rights. Civil rights are just the norm. We won't need to have set-asides. We just serve everybody equitably. A huge component of that is ensuring that we've got local and diverse representation. So I've been reminding everybody that we talk to, County committee nominations opened on June 15th. If you're interested in being part of the local policymaking solution, throw your name in the hat. If you've got a friend that you think would do well representing your community, your producers, your organization, throw their name in the hat. We're also looking for representation on our state committees, which are the next level up of policy implementation. And they play the critical role of hiring those county office trainees, who many of your producers will know very well. With that, I'd really like to open it up for questions if there are any, and hear some of what the concerns of the California Creamery Operators Association are. What do we have that's working? What do we have that's not? What haven't we even thought of about your particular industry? And know that I'll get the questions that I can answered in the chat, but we are going to get a list of these questions, and we'll get answers to all of the questions back to the Creamery Operators Association in pretty short order. So I'm going to stop with the talking points and start to field the questions now. And the first one from Maddie Munson. USDA is actively engaged in agriculture efforts to reduce greenhouse gases. What role is dairy going to play? And I guess I'd have to turn the question back to the dairy operators. What role do you see yourselves playing? As we look to build out climate smart ag incentives, there are any number of things that you can engage in as an industry, even if it's the sourcing of your food stuff for your livestock. Are you sourcing it from somebody that does cover crops? Are you sourcing it from somebody that's got the filter strips? Maybe you're growing your own food on farm. Are you engaging in those practices, participating in the incentive-based programs that we have at the NRCS and the FSA to help move us towards an industry that is being more thoughtful about greenhouse gases? The next question talks about capital-intensive nature of the dairy industry, especially for a new farmer. And finance, man, you get me started on finance and I might just take up the whole time talking about that question, because that's really where I've come from. Livestock industry writ large is capital intensive, especially in the northern tier states where I have done the bulk of my work, where we need 30 to 40 to 50 acres per cow just to run one cow-calf unit. Dairy industry is similar in the need for infrastructure. Our loan limits are really not tailored to suit every operation. They were increased in the last farm bill, and larger loan caps are a way to help with this. Our loan limits are set by statute by the Congress, though. So we can't really do anything beyond that $600,000 real estate loan and that $400,000 farm operating loan. We do have guarantee programs for our lending. The limits for those are a little higher. They're 1.76 million for farm operating and farm ownership. Of course, you need a lender there, and sometimes our lenders don't have the taste for what they perceive to be risk. And I say that in air quotes because I don't believe that risk is something that producers should solely bear, nor is it something that they bring to the table themselves. As lenders and financiers of agriculture, we can set terms that help mitigate the risk and share it across the sector. So that's something that we're really, really excited and eager to work towards in the future. So Darren, I think I got to most of the points in your question there. And I will run on if we get to talking about finance. So Jennifer, don't be bashful about flagging me and slowing me down. How are the FSA's programs continuing to evolve to address food insecurity? We're really on the production side of this. Food insecurity is really the role of some of our sister agencies across the board. I know AMS just rolled out a lot of money for improving local and regional food systems. There's more and more money becoming available for the protein processing centers that are needed in the country. But our perspective is the more we can do to improve the bottom line of the producer and give them choices, help them be on the farm to implement those choices, that's going to improve food security for everybody, because that producer is going to be able to be more thoughtful about their method of production. We've got another question from Maddie Munson. Farming is increasingly challenging. You aren't just a whistling Dixie. How does the Biden administration envision ensuring the U.S. is prepared to produce enough food to continue feeding the nation and the world? Again, it really ties back to empowering our producers. But there's another aspect of that really goes into educating our consumers as well. And how do we chip away at the artifices that exist between our producers and our consumers that keep us from knowing what one another are doing or what one another want? We could address the need for a growing food supply on this planet by simply reducing our food waste. That's one aspect that we need to look at. So how do we reduce food waste? Well, more nutritious food is the key to that. And how do we break this cycle of ever increasing production because it's commoditized, and get back to something about value and nutrition? There's a lot of work to be done, and it goes all across the sector. But the Biden administration is committed to helping bring that to bear and feed our country and continue to help to feed the rest of the world. I've heard it told that there's going to be 9 billion people on this planet by, I think it's 2050. That ain't very far away. That's way less than a lifetime. So there's plenty of work to do, and we have to think about how we're going to do it in the face of climate change as well. I think we've got through all of our questions. Are there any follow-up questions? Give a second here. If not, I'll take an opportunity to talk a little bit about the future and oh, there we got one. All right. Can I provide insight as to if the infrastructure bill can help with the California water situation? It is very challenging to produce food without water. We've done a lot of work with your neighbors to the north there, up there in the Klamath Basin. And it's our understanding that that water source where they're doing that irrigated crop is getting turned off because of the widespread drought. That drought is covering much of the western part of the country. And it just echoes the fact that we need to start thinking more and more about climate smart agriculture, because if we do these climate smart ag practices like cover crop, reduced or no-till, taking a look at what crops we're producing to move away from water intensive crops, then we can maybe make that change. But it all comes back to empowering that producer to be able to make a choice. Right now, we're all stuck in what I call the commodity cycle. All of the financing that you have to get through this production year is based on last year's production and how much you could borrow to do the next year's production, instead of how much money did I have at the end of the year and how do I go about changing my production to meet the different demands from the environment, from our consumers. So it really all goes back William, to empowering the producers to have more choices in what they're producing and how. Short of that, if I can develop a way to make it rain, I surely will, because we could use some over here in the Dakotas as well. Another question about expanding export markets and what are the administration's plans. Redeveloping relationships with those that would be importing our products is a critical part of the administration's plans. The previous administration took a little different stance than that, and I don't know that that worked out very well for any of our producers. We had to create and fund a program as a nation out of the Commodity Credit Corporation just to mitigate the impacts of that to producers. And again, many of our producers were left out of those programs. I don't know how that worked out, especially for the creamery operators, but I know that the livestock folks really didn't fare very well in the market facilitation program, but we're every bit the victim of the trade wars that were started. So it's all about relationships and how do we assure our trade partners that we're engaging in practices that are going to get them a safe, reliable, and fair valued food supply. I don't like to talk about affordable food. I like to talk about fair value. You're getting nutrition and you're paying for it. It's a little different than maybe buying something in one of the foil wrappers at the convenience store. We in the livestock industry, we in the dairy industry, in the crop industry, really want to make sure that we're getting as nutritious a product out there as we can afford to. And it ties back to that producer choice again, producer options, because they've got the capital available. I'm looking through to see if we've got any other questions. That's the last question I have in front of me, but maybe there's a couple more coming in here. Well, Mike, I guess if there are no more questions, let me give you a little bit of information about myself. As I mentioned, my name is Zach Ducheneau. My email address is firstname.lastname@usda.gov. I answer all of my own email. So if you have a question or concern that you think it's worth having the administrator of the Farm Service Agency here, please send it to me. I reply to all of my own email, but I get a lot of them, and I'll get to yours eventually. You also have the opportunity of reaching out to your local staff at the county offices all across the country, state, local, our state level staff, and our headquarters staff as well. So if you have any questions that we didn't quite get to, or if you have something that comes up after you have some time to think about it, please get that over to me and we'll see if we can get you an answer. All right, publications are now reporting that Congress has no desire to extend trade promotion authority to President Biden. Do you envision the President and the Secretary educating Congress on the importance of trade promotion authority? I know that the Secretary has always been very willing to get out there and visit with the Congress about how we can work together, and I presume that President Biden is inclined the same way. However, that's a unique relationship where we kind of have to wait for them to ask. So at every turn, we plan to share with our friends on the Hill what we think can be done to help based on our work out there firsthand with all of you. Next question, can the USDA play a role in addressing export transportation challenges? I'll be honest, William, I'm going to have to get back in touch with you on that one. So make sure that I get your email address so that I can follow up, because I'm not sure if USDA's got a role in that or if that falls under one of the other departments. I know we do a lot of work in helping producers get their product overseas through some of our cost share programs in the Foreign Ag Service. But as to the transportation challenges, that might be in someone else's bailiwick. Any other questions? I see my friend has come back on the screen.
Great, thank you. Zach, I very much appreciate you taking time to tune in with us today. And I want to thank all our participants for their participation in the programming. Please plan to join us again tomorrow at 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, when we will continue the discussion with some informative panels, including an insider's view of Washington, consumer trends in dairy, and promoting a culture of innovation here in California. Good day, and we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Zach.
I appreciate it.